back, guys, to another video, and we continuing and concluding today with the AlgoExpert Clone. So today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be compiling and running the source code within I think I said editor, right? Within the editor which we have made last video. So here we have our text editor, whereby I think we're running some TypeScript. So this is the text editor that we have. So we're gonna be compiling and running the source code within this text editor, right? So now we'll need some back end. So I couldn't find a way of how these guys are actually compiling algorithms, linked list, those data structures and algorithms. We're just gonna be keeping it simple, just to give you guys the core idea of compiling and running code, right? So we're gonna be doing this in this most simplest way. So if you guys are liking these videos and you guys want to see more of these videos, please like, share and subscribe. And let's get to the video. And this really keeps me motivated, your likes, your comments. I'm really pumped to bring you more tutorials in 2021, and I'll try to post almost 3 times a week. I'll hope I can manage to do that, but then let's get to this, right? So remember, we just made a nice simple server. So now what we want to do is we want to build off from this server. So now we'll say const port. So now we just want to make it a bit more proper, right? And then we'll give it a port of 5000 as a fallback, and then we'll say port, and then we change that to port, right? So that's the first thing. So now the second thing is, let's install some packages, right? We need cores. So we'll say npm so that our React app can connect. We'll say npm install cores, and we'll also install its type called cores, right? And what else we will need? We'll also need formidable for body parsing. So we'll say formidable, and we'll say add types, and then say formidable. Alright, so this is what we'll be using for body parsing. So we're just gonna keep this back end simple. The core idea here is just compiling, running the source code, bringing back the message if the user did pass the challenge. So we'll be doing simple challenges like hello world, things like that. Maybe we'll try and make it a bit more complex. And formidable, I think I didn't type it right. npm install formidable, and then I need its type, so I think I didn't type that properly. So we're gonna keep it simple. We're gonna do some simple tasks, because at the end of the day, for determining if algorithms are made correctly, that is a big one, hey. So now we'll say cores from cores, all right? And then now we need to set up our cores, all right? So now we can say server dot use, and then want to use cores, and then we're just gonna keep it like that, all right? And then now what else do we need? What we need right now is we've set up our base server. So we're not gonna be persisting anything on the database or anything, but then now what we need to do is we need a controller for holding our challenges, so, and also managing everything, right? So in the source we'll say controller, and then we'll say, in that controller we'll say code, let's say code validator, so it makes sense. Code controller, and then let's make a ts file called code controller.ts. So in here we want to import from formidable, we want to import incoming form, right? And then now what we need here is we need what is, okay, so we have formidable, we have that, but then now let's create, let's say 3 exercises, right? So we'll say const exercise. So So I'll say const exercises, which will be an object, and here we want to have exercise 1. Alright, so we'll say x1, and then here we're just gonna say this is also an object, so the exercise will be print out hello world, and then expected output, because this is what we're going to use, expected output. So this is what we're going to use to validate. We'll say hello world. So I don't know how I'm going to validate this 100% sure if my thinking is correct, so let's just continue. So now let's say exercise, we say exercise, and then here on this exercise, let's take it a bit up a notch and see if we can handle this. So we'll say a reverse 1 2 3 2b 3 2 1. Right, so we do that, and then we'll see if we can be able to do that and validate if that user gave the correct things. Expected output should be 3 2 1. Right, so now I think let's keep it with 2 exercises. Right, so now what we do now is we need an interface, right? And then we'll say code. So here for this one, let's first give the user the exercise, right? So we'll say get exercise, right? Get exercise. So now here we'll need some types, right? So I just like having my parameters fully typed, so I'll say that as a request, and we need a response. So we give this, it should take in parameters of request with the type of request, and the response with the type of response, and it returns back a response, right? So this is the first function that we'll be using, right? So we'll say class get not get man, and so we say code controller, right? So now that's what we do, and then now it should implement code. So this is that. So now this class must implement everything within the interface. That's what the implement actually means, right? And then we say request, and it's a request and a response, and it takes back a response. But then now what it does is we'll choose randomly between 1 and 2, right? Which one we're gonna be sending back, right? So if my JavaScript is proper, we'll say a random number. Hopefully my JavaScript is proper here. We'll say math.flow, and then math.random, and then times 2. I think if my if my JavaScript is proper, I think like this should give us what we want. So but then to test it up quick, what we can do is we can use the node REPL, so that we see if what I am saying is proper. So we say const, let's say math.flow, and we say math.random, and 2 plus 1, right? So it gives that. So okay, it's always giving me 2 and 1, so it is working, right? We're getting 2 and 1, right? So I guess what I was trying works. So now this should be fine. So we're getting 1 and 2, even though with arrays or objects this is 0 and this is 1. So if I wanted the 0 and 1, I believe I should have omitted this, and then I should be getting 0 and 1, right? So I should be getting 0 and 1, which is something I guess we can use, right? So that we can get 0 and 1, 0 and 1, because we know we wanna to avoid making heavy logics, because I would have to make a logic that if it's 1 it should go to 0, if it's 2 it should go to 1. So to avoid logics, let's just keep it like that. Like this, we get the random number 0 or 1. So now what we do is we'll return. So now it's best practice to try catch, because something might happen on your server. So you return the response to status of 500.json, and then you send a message saying that network error, failed to load exercise. Alright, so that's what we're gonna be doing. And then now what we do is we now return a response.status of 200.json, and then within that JSON we wanna return an object of that. So we'll say exercises of a random number. So element, so we'll say number, right? But then that was inferred for me, I believe, right? But then I could infer that myself. So what is happening here? It says no index signature with parameter number found. What's happening here? Okay, so I could do this to avoid, because I'm lazy to be debugging. So what we do is we say this is an object like that, an array of objects, and then we remove that. This should be an array of objects. Alright, and I believe that should be a capital letter that. So this is an array of objects. Alright, so but then instead of 0 we want to use the random number. Right, so we return back a response of the exercise like that. So now we basically done with the get exercise. Let's make a route for that. So now what we do, before I make the route, because I want to make our lives easy, so that we move these things. So now what I want to do is I want to kill this client. Within the client, just run for me npm I Axios, so that we get ready with Axios, and we also want to install its types. So we get ready with Axios to get the questions, right? So while that does for us, we make a routes folder, and then in the routes folder we want to make a folder called code exercise, and then within that we'll say code exercise.ts. So now I want to import from Express. We will want to import a router, and remembering that we have to export this class, which is code controller. That's what we want to export, right? So now we import from the controller we want to import the code controller. So now we say const router is equals to router, and then we say const controller is equals to new code controller. Right, so now we say router dot get, and on the API, and then we say get exercise, and then we say request, and then response, and then we say controller dot get exercise. We pass it down the request and also the response. So but then now we want to export this router, so we export default the router. Now that should be fine. So now we want to take it to the entry point, which is our server. So now we say import code exercise. Okay, so exercise, why the spelling beating me now? Exercise, man. So exercise from a route code exercise, that right. So now just right there we say server.use, wanna use code exercise, right? So now let's do that. So before we test it within our client, I will say curl. Let's use curl for now. Let's see, we can say http, but then now I need the server to be up and running, so I can say npm run dev, right? So now we run our dev, and then that should be running. It should say port started on 5000, hopefully. If we don't get any errors, there we go. So now I say http, and I say local host 5000 API / get exercise, right? So now we are getting the exercise. Print out hello world, expected output hello world. Let's see, we get another one. We're getting things randomly, right? So as you can see, everything is returned back randomly. So now this is what we wanna get from our client, right? So now let's go back to the client a bit so that we can get that exercise, have the layout of the exercise and the buttons and everything, and then finally the submission and seeing if everything works, right? So that will be the trickiest part, I believe. So now what we do is, since we have the text editor component, we leave that alone, but then now we create an exercise, a code exercise component, right? So now before we do that, we can, let's say code exercise component. Okay, it wouldn't have made sense to what I was thinking. So now let's just make sure it's tsx, and then now we wanna tsrafc, and then we'll say class name, and then we'll say code exercise. So if you guys are pumped to see how this will be working, pause the video, like the video, so you guys will see that it is possible compiling this. But then the way the AlgoExpert guys are doing it, it's extreme. Like validating algorithms will be something else, unless they're using third parties like the Hacker Earth API, because I saw those APIs, but then I was like, now for tutorial purposes it's not really important. But then you guys can check those out, some good APIs, eh? So say code exercise, so it's some good APIs for things like this. I saw that it works perfectly for things like this. But then so now we'll just put in the code exercise component. See, I hate it when my IntelliSense is not respecting me. So let's import from components, I want code what's happening here. My code exercise is not even listed here. Code exercise, and then what's happening here? From components, I wanna get code exercise. I don't know, it's weird. My intelligence is not that. It is really weird. My intelligence was not picking that up. But then now let's just import that and let us see if that will work for us. So we and it looks like it works, but then I don't know why my intelligence was not picking that up. So now it works, right? So now that should be compiling. So now what I need is I need to import Axios from Axios, right? So this thing doesn't need props. We can remove those props, and then what happens is, remember that we need the question on the left and the question on the right. So either or, we can do it however we prefer, guys, but then I'll just put the question on the left and the code text edit on the right. So I'll say code exercise underscore text. So this will be from Axios, and then I'll say code exercise underscore code text editor, right? So we'll be bringing the text editor component right here. So now what we do here, let's just put some dummy text. Let's say h2, we'll say code exercise, right? So now on component did mount of this, we'll definitely need use effect and use state for this. So now what we do here is we'll say use effect. So now on use effect, what I want to do is I want to const on the URL, which is http that local host 5000/API/get exercise, I believe. Okay, let's just verify I have the URL here, which I know that it worked. There we go. Let's just grab that URL so we can just paste that, knowing that this will work. And so now we'll say axios.get. we want to get the URL, and then this will bring back to us a promise, and we'll say response. And then what we do is we'll say now we need the use state so that we can save that into our state. We'll say const, we'll say code exercise, and then we'll say set code exercise. So we'll say use state, and this should be let's make this an object, right? So this should be an object. So I'm sure it inferred that, so which it didn't. It should have though. When we pass an empty object, it should have, but then I think it doesn't. So let's infer that ourselves. So an object, right? So now we will say set code exercise to response, dot data, right? So now we'll say catch. If there's any errors, we'll grab those error, and then we'll alert if there's any error dot response dot data dot msg. So msg is the JSON error message that we sent. If we just go take a quick look on the server, let's close the client a bit, so that you understand where this msg is coming from. So this error that we're expecting is the only error coming from status code of 500, which is this msg, right? So this is how you can craft that, and then we'll do that, and then we'll see what the error is. But then if the error is something unusual, let us just log the error so that we can see what's happening, right? So now that should handle everything for us. So now what do we do? Let us see this in action, right? So now let's just run npm start to start up our client, make sure that our backend is working, and then just while that thing is still loading up, because I believe it might take its precious time, just to go through this is on component mount, we'll just hit the URL and then set the state of this to what we want, and then we inferred this state as an object, so we can refresh this now. And then obviously that is not the one whereby, so let's go to app so that we can get the path. So the path is / code exercise, right? So now that is loading there. So while that loads, let us see, right? So now once we have that layout, we'll have a button whereby the code that is written within the text editor, we want to take that code and then send it back to the back end, and the back end will validate everything for us, returning back a response whether this person did what we expect, right? So now I can take out the header, man. So if I could, because this header is too much, so if I could take out this part and then just make it this part, I don't know, unless maybe you guys are seeing this as fine, whereby you can just scroll and all that. But then for now, let's not concentrate on that. We can concentrate on that on another time, right? So we have the text editor right here and everything, right? So now what do we do? We need the what's this, man? We need the message to be displayed here, right? So now what we do is we can make our lives easy, putting it on the parent div. So now we'll say once the code exercise is there, and then this div must appear to me, right? So now with confidence, I know that for a fact now I have what we call, so we'll say h3, we'll say code exercise dot exercise. I believe that's what I wrote here. So this is telling me that the object doesn't have a type of exercise, so that's where this thing TypeScript comes into play, whereby you have to do certain things, right? So if it was me building this like project for like real life things, because I like giving my things types, right? So now I can say state, and then I will give it an extends, and it should extend object, right? So now what happens now is I'll give it an exercise, but then noting that this object. Okay, so because I'm using a string, so I'll do like that, because either way I'm using a string, so I don't have to do a lot. So I'll give it a type of t, so it should be generic, and then I'll give it also the expected output. Alright, so I'll give it a type of t. So noting that, remember the expected output is an array and this one is a string. So what definitely I'll do in my project, I'll say s and a, and then document that for myself, saying that s is string, and give the a to be array. So this is something that will make me not forget what's happening within my source code. Right, so now why am I getting the cannot find t? Oh, because I don't have t, so it should be s. Right, so now instead of using this, I use my state interface. Right, so now this state interface is generic. It must take an s, which is a string, and must take that, which is an array, and is an array of numbers. Right, so this is basically what I'll do. So but now what is happening here? So to avoid these things right now and any debugging, so what's happening here? So I'm still getting this exercise declared property exercise does not exist in state. Okay, there we go. So I had a wrong typing. If you can see the difference here, I have exercise spelled out properly, and I think that should also be spelled out properly here. So that was the problem there. So now you can see now the errors are now gone, so I could take that out, and then here we'll do it like that. Alright, so now I can save this, and then hopefully I shouldn't be getting any errors now. So now that is compiling for me. So now that's how I'll decipher the problem. Let's see if this compiles fully without giving any problems. Right, so it's really nice. Like the ones you get used to TypeScript and strongly typed languages, it becomes second nature. And it's actually interesting working and building up your own interfaces, extending other interfaces and all that. Right, so if you guys are also keen to improving this this webpack, we can definitely see to it. So as you can see, yeah, I'm getting this problem. Right, I'm getting this problem. So why am I getting this problem? Why am I getting that problem? Because I'm only displaying this. Obviously it has nothing to do with oh yeah, so what's happening here is my use effect is running a million times. So let's just run that once, and only will have a dependency of code exercise. So let's see how that will help us. So as you guys can see now, this thing was running it is still running a million times. So let's see how this works. Right, so this is still compiling, taking its time. right? So okay, yeah, this was this one needs some improvement that you wouldn't take into production. That does need input. So finish, but then you think, right? Alright, so let's just do this, right? And down to the, and then you can build it, everything down to the basics, right? And this is like more of JavaScript than let us see what happens, right? So but then yeah, so I'll give this thing what's happening here. It says just give it like that. So code exercise is undefined, right? So now we can give it an object, but then set it to any, right? So that whatever that enters, right? So now let us see what happens, right? So let us see what happens. And hopefully we solve the problem. So development is like this, guys. So let us see. And here we go. We still face the same problem. Move some problems. And let's see. And okay, now so I believe the problem here was the mere fact of dependency and all that. So let's just even forget about the complex interfaces and everything. So but then what was happening here is this dependency was changing with this, was executing based on this, right? So I don't know why it executed a million times, which it shouldn't have, but then it's not a problem. We solved the problem. So now let's continue with this the question, right? So obviously this is not looking good. So now what we can do is we can say h2 and say coding exercise, right? But then have it a capital letter E. So now what we want to do is want to have a style sheet for this, right? So in the client, close the server, source styles, let's say code exercise.css, and do that. So now let's close this controller, let's close that, pull this here on the side, and then place it like that, and then we'll say style, no man, so I have to go only once, so I'll say style sheet, and then paste that there, right? So now what we want to do is we want to say code exercise. We want to display flex to this, so we'll say display flex, and then align item center. I don't know, let's see, whatever that does for us, and then we'll say justify content space between. That should do us justice. So but then now let's come to this text thing, right? So we'll say the code exercise, so we'll say class name. This will be the exercise underscore header, and this one should be the exercise itself. So we'll say class name, and then we'll say exercise. Right, so now we come back here, and then we bring this one here. So now what we want to do with this is we want to margin bottom, say 2 rem, right? And we want to give it a font size, say 2 rem as well. I don't know how that look. So now I'm pretty much sure now those things are compiling, so it's loading here. So now we should be having our display flex in a few once that the reload is done. So let's see how our display flex looks like, and we have our text editor breaking, right? So now what we do is, remember, within okay, so let's see. So we have to locate our text editor and see if the problem is something that we have here, right? So here we can give it a width, and the width we want to give it 100%, right? So I should always take out 100% of the size which it is given. That is the purpose of that, because now the container is most probably maybe having 50% because we're displaying flex, I don't know, whatever that's happening. So we just want the text editor to take up whatever width that it's given, let it take it out, right? So now let's see how we're looking right now. So we're still facing the same problem, guys. So now how can we circumvent this problem? Okay, so let me think. So I never thought that would be having such a problem. So now, so let's say this, right? So let's say that. So let's give this a width, say maybe 70%, right? So let's see how that looks, because if I give this container 70%, and even if it was 50%, and then we're giving that text editor 100% of its parent, so it has something to fill into. So I think my logic there is a bit proper, so we'll find out soon, guys, if my thinking was proper, right? So let's just wait for that reload so that we can see this text editor, right? So okay, so now I'm pretty much sure now, because I saw the load coming up like that, so I knew that for sure. So now what I want to remove is this align items. So I want to remove that. So now we have that. So finally, so the thing is looking like this, right? So now I definitely need to see where will I put a button to submit. So I'll just put it right underneath the code exercise and all that, right? So now the exercise, that's where under the code exercise I'll put the button. So now what we do is I'll put it right here. So I'll say button, and then I'll say run code, right? And then let's say for this tutorial I'll be supporting Python, but then you could support any language. So for simplicity, we'll be supporting Python and all that, right? So that's what we're gonna be doing, and it'll be easy using the package because I won't be using any what we call API for this. If you wanted to support languages like compiled languages like Java, then an API is the way to go instead of using the package that we are about to use, right? So now we're just margining, bottoming that. So now let's just change the language in our text editor. The language that we'll be supporting is Python and only Python. So now we come here. So the language, instead of TypeScript, we'll say Python, right? And now that should do us justice. So now we have the submit button. I believe right now it's refreshing. Let us see that work for us, right? So let's see that reload. Let us see. Okay, so now I obviously wanna, okay, so I have align items here. Oh yeah, this text, this is some text that I want to remove, and this button, let's just give it a class name and say btn, right? So now I want this btn to display me block margin top me 1.3 rem, right? So now let's see if there's more styling to it. We can give it more styling, but then for now let's just focus on it functioning, right? So now we have our code exercise that is coming to us, and that, so now the aim right now is to get this hooked up and see we can manage state of this text editor. So now the aim right now is we have to manage state of the text editor, right? So that's our second goal. So here we might need also the Monaco documentation here, if I'm not mistaken, but then let's see if we can get this right. So right, so now I think with CSS for now, let's just hold back. So now we have the structure of the code text editor on the right and then the exercise on the left. So this is normally maybe how things are structured in a coding exercise tutorial website, right? So but then what I want to do, one thing that I want to do is pad everything out, say 1.2 rem, so that it's off the wall. That's one thing that I want to do. So now what we do is, let's see how we can manage state of this, right? So for that we'll definitely need okay, so let me think. So if I have okay, so I think my text editor should come with its own button, unless I'm mistaken, because I don't know how I'll be able to, because if I manage state and then I press run code, where will I be getting the code? Unless the code I save it within local storage and then I retrieve that. Okay, so let's just make it simple like that, saving it in local storage and retrieving that from there. So this is just a quick solution that I'm thinking right now. Might not be the best, but then maybe should work. So we'll say on change, and I think Monaco doesn't handle on change like this, right? So definitely right now we'll need the Monaco. So what we'll do is we'll say npm at Monaco. Let's see how everything is handled. So definitely we'll need to see how they're handling things. It will make things easy for us. Alright, so now I think what I'm interested in is get value, and then handle so okay, so this is giving me things that I'm not interested in. Listen to editor change. So yeah, we're getting on to something. So so use ref. Here they're using use ref, and then handle did mount. So editor dot current editor. Okay, so let's just do this. Alright, so I have that use ref. So let's just see where that gets us. Right, so we import that, and then we get that, we do this. So let's see where this gets us. So if we can alert, so on did mount, I want to get the current state of the editor. Right, and what is happening here? So now remember that here they said editor with that, but then I believe, okay, so where are they getting editor.current is equals to editor? So where are they getting this editor? So remember this. So what they're doing here is they're passing this, that they write this argument there. So that is what I want to also pass. So I'll just give it a any to avoid any things. So now that function here, copy that function, and then here we facing this problem. So editor ref object is possibly undefined. Right, so let's infer that as any, and also infer that as any. Alright, so we get our values. So now right, so now let's say so right here this is logging that, so I believe that is being logged, and then okay, so I believe right now but it looks like you can handle with on change. From what I'm seeing, it looks like you can handle with on change, because now this solution I was not liking for real. It looks like you can handle with on change. Let's say handle let's first try this. If this works, then we'll go with the on change. If that doesn't work, we'll go the second route. Right, so but then why am I getting this thing? So the height, what's happening here? So property on change does not exist. Okay, so let's just log. So they have the EV in that. So So the value is that which is coming back to me. So here, if it includes bad, blah 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 blah, replace, and then they falling back to the value if that is proper, right? So now what we do is we do that, and then I log out the value, and then I say any, right? So if I get any errors, it's fine, guys. So let's see. So let's save that, compile, save that, and then let's see. So yeah, so let's see if we get, because yeah, if they used on change, why use the refs, man? Like, it becomes a bit more tedious. Oh, I should be using the controlled editor. I should be using the controlled editor instead of the controlled editor. Makes sense. Right, and then as you can see now, the error goes out quickly, right? So now it makes sense. Now it makes sense, and it becomes very much easier using the controlled editor than the what we call this plain editor, right? So let's see what happens. It compiled that. So now what I want to do is, let's set, as I'll say, localhost, not localhost, local storage, that's set item, and then we'll say code, and then we'll give it the value, right? So now let's save that, and then now what we want to do is, when this button is clicked, right, so on click, what I want to do is I want to run code, right? So now what we do is